Hi, welcome to Aries season. And to honor it, I want to talk about my own natal aspect, which is Pluto conjunct South Node. I gotta start by kind of prefacing it in a way for you to understand why I interpret it the way I do. And it's really me reading my own life experience that I deduce it's actually that particular aspect being manifested in my lived experience. And that preface, that preamble or caveat, if you like, is what, or rather how I use astrology, or what I consider to be the ultimate power of astrology and its helpfulness and usefulness to me. To me, astrology shows me my limits. And I think that's wonderful. I would say that this view of mine is kind of potentially controversial because a lot of how astrology is brought into the world as a tool for self-development, let's call it, or even spiritual development, or both, is this kind of idea that it's expansive and that it's full of potential, and you are your whole chart. This idea that anything about it can be limiting and limited, my sense is that's kind of frowned upon, if not downright rejected or considered the wrong way. And yet, I mean, I'd love that to be the case. I'd love to be just like, oh yeah, I'll just be this. Well, I'll just be that. Can I pick off the shelf and whatever? I just found that my life lived experience doesn't really support that. And so in time, I got to, or rather learn to love it, or to accept it, or to make peace with it. So that's my ultimate goal. But it's a limitation, let's say, and I want to be okay with it. And so my experience of astrology is that if I had, is that it's limiting because it's not 12 signs in 12 houses. Each house has 12 signs and 12 planets. So we all have 12 Mercuries and 12 Venuses in different signs and houses, in all the signs and houses, so we can be everything, right? Or we have the potential, the full potential of the whole chart. It just doesn't resonate for me. What I love about it is that all of a sudden I'm like released from all these potentials, all these amazing things that could be. It was a relief that actually, okay, so I really have this area of my chart that I need to worry about. And that's given to me this lifetime. I have obviously all the signs and I have all the planets, but then they're in a particular constellation to each other, in particular relationship to each other. They're in only so many houses, and there are only so many signs, and the rest is not part of the tapestry for me. Certainly not in the kind of full frontal, intense, focused kind of way. I was just illustrating how we are not everything and how our chart is just pockets of this full whole thing that we are asked to kind of particularly pay attention to. Energetically, we're drawn to those some areas and not others. And when we are in those areas, we are only there in certain ways determined by the planet and the sign. So you see what I mean? It just gets narrower and narrower and narrower, right? And I love that. I do love that because it kind of makes it easier in many ways. However, what you are given necessarily to kind of narrow in on, zoom in on, may be everything but easy, or it may feel everything but easy. So now we get to my Pluto conjunct South Node. Let me give you a backstory, an anecdote, if you like, astrological anecdote, which kind of sets the scene and sets the stage, I suppose. And it's a book written by a famous, renowned astrologer called Mark Jones. He's a Pluto in Virgo generation. And it's something about healing the soul or something like that, I think the book is called. And there is a chapter in it on Pluto and nodes, and obviously therefore Pluto and South Node. And I'm going to paraphrase it. I'm not going to give you the full lay of the land of that particular chapter, but there are two significant things that popped out at me, and I was like, oh, thank God someone actually had the guts to name this. So one thing he said was that, so astrologically speaking, the headline for Pluto conjunct South Node is that it's a repeat of an old story, like reliving the past, reliving an old karma until you have learned a lesson or until you have transmuted and all the rest, right? But it's the reliving of something. So there is what that essentially means. There is a profound sense of stuckness, like a stuckness of a form, like you just know that you can't. It's like, I just don't know how to get through this treacle. And it's like you're doing, but it's like that, like you're in a dream, right? You're like trying, you know, when you're in a dream and you're trying to move or run and you just kind of like almost can't. And then he says something which I thought, kudos to you. He really gained so much respect from me. When he said that as an astrologer and a teacher, for a while, quite a while, he dreaded getting a client or a student with his signature because he didn't want to tell the person, oh, well, you're just going to repeat. And maybe for your second Saturn return, so age 50 or 5 to 60 or whatever, yeah, maybe you'll be free of the past, right? And so he was like dreading it because he didn't want to be the bearer of those not so pleasant news. And so this guy came because he was stuck, and he was, you know, the story is irrelevant, but the details of it, but the sense, one of the things that really like shook me to the core because I recognize it is that like this, he described him as being just living this life, like wasting time, wasting life, and life wasted was for years now. It's something I've been playing with as either title of a book or a title of my exhibition that I one day have, or even a handle on Instagram or even YouTube. But I kind of didn't, it's too negative and I don't want to, words are spells and they have the energy, carry energy. So I kind of didn't want to cement what's already pretty heavy going. So hence why it hasn't seen daylight. But I so related to that. Okay, so that's kind of like a preamble to it, or not preamble, that's sort of setting the stage, just so you can see the kind of what we're dealing with here. Why is this so heavy, Pluto conjunct South Node? So just to kind of astrologically explain the heaviness and the stuckness and the intensity of that stuckness, and is that the South Node is the past, basically, is what we bring in, the gifts, but also the sort of the worn out identities and everything, ideas and ways of being that carry some wisdom in it, but are actually tired, and we tend to grow out of them, and we tend to grow into the North Node more so as we grow older. The South Node is the past. It's the kind of what we already know or have done so many times. We are really good at it. We are really good at the South Node. And then you have Pluto there, which means there is a profound intensity to that, to all that you're bringing. It's like all that you know so well. It's something that you have, where we have Pluto is our power. Like, so it's like you feel empowered in your old karma, in your old identities. There is a sense of empowerment in them. But because they're old and worn out, eventually we feel like our South Node can really drain us, right? Whatever, if we're stuck in there for too long, we feel like life force is draining us. And so what I discovered in my life is that I have that sense of innate, some kind of confidence and feeling really comfortable with big powers around me. Like I don't feel like I'm lesser than them, put it that way. So, and I put that down to, okay, I have Pluto conjunct Jupiter as well, and South Node, and Uranus. But yeah, so I feel, I feel at home in a way with power and powerful people. But whenever I try to achieve power, and for me in the past, power, my own this lifetime past, like 5 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, would have meant, sometimes would have meant a career, a well-paid job, like a recognition, professional status. And there was a moment when I was at that peak, really, in that one chapter of my career of project management, where I reached that really level where I was, I had accolades, I was recognized, I was celebrated, I was valued highly, I was paid incredibly well. So I felt I was in my power. And yet I remember having this conversation with my husband, and I was saying, and I kept doing this, I just can't, I'm just doing this whole waving of the hands, like I just want it off my shoulders. I was like feeling suffocated. I never liked the idea of being a king or a queen. As a child, I used to say, oh my God, it's such a heavy duty thing. Like it's all about duty and responsibility. It's just no fun. So as you can see, so this is a signature when you have Pluto on your South Node, being powerful may well feel also comfortable and in a way familiar, but it could be draining. It certainly felt for me. Now, Pluto conjunct South Node is anything conjunct South Node, you're bringing, it's more likely that you are bringing into this lifetime shadow experiences of that archetype. So with Pluto, abuse is a power, certainly a shadow aspect of Pluto. And so I certainly know memories of my past lives, or rather some, snippets of it, are about abuses of power, whether I abused it or whether I was the abused from the powers, right? And so there is a sense of like, I don't want to touch it because it's so nasty and it's evil, right? And it can be, certainly. So, but it's ultimately, it's almost like with the South Node and Pluto, if we are talking Pluto power, it's about like recycling the concept of power and re-examining and therefore redefining and putting into place a different kind of power that's like cleaned up from all that other stuff that I just talked about, right? So it's not that one will not have power if one wants to have power, right? It's just that it's going to be a much cleaner version if it was going to happen. So that's one thing about Pluto conjunct South Node, certainly from my experience. Another thing I have contributed to this, or attributed to this aspect of mine, is this compulsion to destroy things I create. And just compulsion for destruction. I absolutely get the greatest turn on when I destroy things. It's not like sometimes, depending what it is, I can be very present in it and savoring the experience and my turn on and my excitement for being, because I'm destructive, because I'm destroying something. Other times when when it involves other people or relationships, or it does affect other people, I'm not as comfortable in it, and I'm often holding back and I don't do it, but I want to do it. So it's not as maybe even conscious, if you like. Maybe it's conscious in the sense I'm aware of it, but I'm not bringing the light of consciousness to transmute and to alchemize, no. And I think destroying creation, I think it's healthy. I think it's the nature of the creative process of any kind. I just love destroying it. I love seeing it crumble and just like burn, and just, I love it. And yeah, so that's one other thing. Past lives. This is the toughest one, actually. But the wisdom, ultimately, of Pluto South Node conjunction is that it's the compassion. It provides the kind of compassion that not even Neptune can. Well, or rather, they're very different qualitatively. So So let me just talk a little bit about that. So Neptune will approach you. So as an archetype, like Neptune as a person, right? Will sit you down and tell you and let you confess to the worst crimes that a human can commit, that you have committed, right? And it will just absolve you all of it, and it will make you feel like it's all just dissolved, right? And it's just kind of washed off. And in a way, it's a shortcut. And you'll see what I mean by shortcut when I talk about Pluto. And it's all gone and done, and it's like you feel healed, you feel washed, you feel cleansed, right? Pluto, if Pluto was a therapist, or is a therapist, and you're as a client coming to it, and it's also saying, okay, confess to your worst crimes, all the horrible things you've done, and you do. It's like, and this is why it's so beautiful, I think, that's where this compassion is not a shortcut. It really lets you as a client, in this metaphor anecdote of mine, know that you have been, like, your experience is being recognized for what it is, for all its ugliness and evilness and wrongness, and the forgiveness is issued all the same. Neptune doesn't recognize it. It issues it because it's just Neptune. Nothing's ugly in Neptune. Like, ugliness is just immediately becomes beautiful. Like it's all about beauty and compassion. It bypasses and I don't mean to suggest that it's cheating. It's just Neptune. That's what Neptune is. It's its beauty and its power. But Pluto will make you feel, Pluto conjunct South Node in particular, will make you feel like you are being seen. When you're being absolved of something, after it's been fully understood how awful you have been, you've been still absolved. Do you get the quality difference? So you're forgiven for what it is, as opposed to you're just forgiven because you're human. You're just it's kind of beyond you. Like you're forgiven for, you haven't been paid attention to really. You're just being forgiven, right? The specifics don't matter, and you're forgiven. Where Pluto South Node will make you feel like all of it is very much being heard, very specifically and clearly, and understood in the full extent of its awfulness, and you're still forgiven and loved. I mean, you gotta see what I'm talking about, right? How much more powerful that is. And so that is the gift of Pluto South Node conjunction. And how it does that is that it just, by its signature, by its nature of that particular constellation, right, that conjunction, South Node Pluto, is that the past lives are pretty horrific. And it could be both ends. Like you could be, as a native of this aspect, you could be the perpetrator or you could be the victim. And usually it's both. I certainly know I've been both. I mean, I'm not even sure what part I play in any of them. I just know I imagine I'm probably more on the victim end, and on the other I'm probably on the perpetrator end, just by the kind of the imagery and the scene. And it's like, because my Pluto is in the 5th, so it comes to me almost like a movie, a short movie, right? Director's cut or something, whatever. And so I have to work with that. I can't just ignore that. I tried, and all kinds of stuff, and then I turned to art. Art has been the most healing thing, and I then moved from art to something more direct and kind of more intimate, even like I removed that last, art was like a medium that, it was like a buffer, just eased me into some of those themes and some of these stories and some of these images and all of that. And then that grew my strength and strengthened my muscle of bearing witness and being present with these images, with these stories, with my feelings about them and my feelings in them. But the point I'm ultimately making is you just have nowhere else to go but to compassion. It's pretty heavy, to say the least, and I have to deal with it. I have to do something with it, like I say, and an act of love and compassion, which is what shadow work is, which is what Jung essentially teaches, and some other younger versions of Jung, or certainly his followers, to call them so, are also talking about, which was helpful to me, which is that essentially we're here to love all of ourselves, all parts of ourselves. We have to, otherwise we're never going to find peace or calm or peace, really peace. I think we're all after that, just that sense of I'm at home, I can relax. This feels, this sense of unconditional love really is what peace is a synonym for, if you ask me. So that is the gift, the heaviest gift, like the darkest gift of Pluto conjunct South Node. And let me see, there was one other thing called spiritual evolution, which would be the kind of, not a headline, but like no headline, sorry, but another theme of Pluto conjunct South Node. And what it means really, that was my kind of shorthand for basically a life that is meant to be unremarkable. And by that I mean, I really don't mean literally unremarkable, because to me remarkable is just anything can be remarkable. But I'm using it here because I'm using it for its more conventional, let's say, meaning, which is that something is remarkable. It has to be like known, recognized, like successful, like people have to know of it. How else I'm going to remark on it? So to stand out, right? To be remarkable, to stand out, and therefore to be visible. But ultimately, the point of Pluto conjunct South Node is more about like seeking this sense of power and empowerment within, and merging, because Pluto is all about merging, which is essentially what incarnation is. It's like the spirit merges with the matter, or the soul merges with the body, and that's Pluto. If you listen back to some of my earlier videos on Pluto, right? So we are looking to merge with not external symbols of power, but internal. And so that's what I mean unremarkable. Instead of seeking outside these sources to merge with, these sources, symbols of power, we are looking for something internal. Whatever makes you feel empowered, it doesn't require you to be validated externally for that power. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. That's why I used unremarkable being the word for visible, the opposite of visible, right? So as long as you're not seeking external validation, and you don't need that external validation for that power, I think you're doing right by your Pluto conjunct South Node in terms of the empowerment and your sense of, and actually, because like I said, I think at the beginning is that wherever we have Pluto, we find our power. So the fact that it's in a messed up South Node, meaning it's something we are mostly meant to be leaving behind, and it's a bit of a draining area of life, and all that. It's kind of a disempowered Pluto in a sense. The empowerment comes from everything I talked about. So I'm not going to just summarize it based on the one last point I made on spiritual evolution. And that internal, that kind of not seeking external validation of your own power is a form of spiritual evolution, right? Is a form of spirituality. It has to be, I imagine, hence that's why I called it so. Okay, I think that's it, and I hope, I would love to hear from you if you're Pluto South Node conjunction. Oh my God, please let me know you exist out there and tell me about your experience of it.